She was already inside when I locked the door. Not in a metaphorical sense. I mean the actual apartment lights off, boots lined up, radio humming static, like it knew what was coming. No broken glass. No forced entry. Just the smell of stew and the wrong page open on my desk. I walked through the hallway slow, hand near the holster I wasn't supposed to be wearing. In the kitchen, steam rose from the pot like nothing had happened. In the bedroom, her coat, folded, still warm. That's the thing about agents who blend in too well. You stop noticing the moment they stop pretending. And that night, I finally noticed. Before I regret saying any of this, hit that like button. Subscribe if this is already making you uncomfortable, and tell me what city you're watching from, and what time it is. I like knowing where in the world people still dare to listen to secrets like these. West Berlin, January 1968. The front door was locked, but not from the inside. The embassy called it a diplomatic apartment, but it was really a third-floor box with a view of the neighbor's laundry line. Still, it was warm, quiet, and came with a reinforced lock, which, back then, felt like a luxury. That morning, I'd just finished reviewing a decoded cable from Frankfurt when I heard the buzzer. She arrived exactly on time. Coat buttoned too. The neck, hair pinned with surgical precision. Voice soft but steady. Her name, at least the one she gave, matched the file from the French contact. A recommendation, they said, from someone in the cultural exchange program. No red flags. My daughter, barely 2, studied her like she did everyone through silence. 10 minutes later, they were on the floor with wooden blocks. I made coffee and pretended not to watch. In that moment, it felt like peace. Manufactured. Peace, sure, but I'd take it. 1 hour of stillness in a month of double checks and dead drops. She returned the next day. Same time, same coat. No questions. By the third visit, I handed her a house key. I told myself it was for logistical ease. The truth? I wanted the sound of the door opening when I wasn't looking. It gave the illusion of normalcy. Even my handler didn't object. It's good cover, she said. Diplomats have families. Families have nannies. You're playing the role. I was always good at roles. She started preparing the baby's breakfast. Toasted bread, soft fruit, warm milk. My daughter giggled when she said milk, and I found myself repeating the word later in the car, just to hear how it felt. In my mouth, something about her rhythm, quiet, competent, unshaken, started to bleed into my own. I stopped double knotting my shoes. Started sleeping more than 3 hours. Even read a novel. Halfway through, we never spoke about anything outside the apartment. She never asked what I did. I never asked where she'd worked before. But one afternoon, while folding clothes, she found a page I'd left on the desk. Just numbers scrambled, irrelevant. She handed it to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You forgot this, she said. I didn't forget. I'd left it there. On purpose. She never mentioned it again. Neither loomed nor withdrew. She just returned the next day, like always, with the same milk, the same smile, the same silence. It should have calmed me. Instead, it made me start checking the locks again. And I thought that was the strangest part of that winter until she started teaching me German. She started with numbers EINS, Zwei, DREI. At first, I thought it was for the baby until she handed me the spoon mid-breakfast and said, you try. She meant the word, not the food. I repeated it madly. She laughed. Not mockingly, more like she'd just found something out. It became a routine. While I read the paper, she'd slide in a word or two. Fenster, Tor, Tisch, window, door, table. The kinds of things a spy should already know. But the way she said them slowed everything down. like the apartment had stopped existing outside those syllables. I didn't correct her pronunciation. She didn't correct mine. It wasn't about the words. There was something soft about her instruction, but exact. Like she wasn't teaching me the language. She was calibrating my mouth to say what she needed to hear. One afternoon, she brought flashcards she claimed were for the baby. Animals, colors, prepositions. When she said Hinter, she looked over. Her shoulder. I didn't ask why. I started using German outside the apartment, at the bakery, in the elevator. People corrected me less. A guard at Checkpoint Charlie nodded when I asked directions. For the first time, I wasn't just passing as a local. I was thinking like one. My handler noticed. Getting comfortable? She asked. I shrugged. Just learning to pronounce my cover story. She didn't smile. One night, after the baby fell asleep, the Nanera stayed a few minutes longer. I offered her tea. She declined, then hesitated. You say gut not too fast, she said. It's not gute, it's gute. I repeated it. She adjusted my mouth with 2 fingers. Soft, precise, then stepped back and said nothing else. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't want anything from her. Not really. But something in me had softened like rust on a hinge that hadn't moved in years. I began to write in both languages. My notes, my codes, my reports, they started carrying 2 voices. The American one, clipped and strategic, and the German one, curved and careful. Hers. One morning, I said Schlüssel instead of key without thinking. She turned around slowly and said, very good, but her face looked disappointed. Or maybe I imagined that. Maybe not. That was the day I stopped trying to impress her. And that's when she started letting the baby draw. With very specific crayons. On very specific paper. I should have noticed the colors sooner. But I was too busy practicing my grammar. It started with a giraffe, drawn in orange crayon, standing next to a tree that was blue on one side, red on the other. My daughter held it up like a trophy. I smiled, patted her head, and pinned it to the fridge like any half-distracted father would. The next day, there was another. A house with 3 windows, each one a different color. The door, oddly, had no handle. I didn't think much of it. Until I saw the doll Dot. She was sitting in the corner, where she always left it. Only now, a small piece of tape blue wrapped around the left arm. The right eye had been painted over. And on the foot, barely visible, was a tiny carved letter. K. I asked the Nanera if she'd seen the child doing anything unusual. She said no, just drawing, like always, smiling. She said it like it meant something. The next toy was a wooden car, slightly burned underneath. Not blackened, just marked, like someone had held a lighter to it, then pulled back. I turned the toy over and felt something rough on the bottom. A filed edge. Not enough to cut, but enough to catch skin. This time, I didn't say anything. I ran a routine sweep for hidden devices. Nothing. Still, I moved the toys to the spare room. 2 days later, they were back in the play area. In the exact same arrangement. Either she didn't notice, or she noticed that I noticed. I told myself it was coincidence. That kids are weird. That crayons and tape don't mean betrayal. I told myself I was overthinking it, but I also started carrying my pistol inside the house. One afternoon, the Nanera arrived with a new coloring book. Gift from a friend, she said. Inside, all blank pages except one that already had a shape shaded in red. A triangle with a tiny circle inside it. I asked her what it meant. Nothing, she said. Just practice. The next night, my daughter couldn't sleep. I rocked her near the window. Across the street, a man stood too long under a broken street lamp. Just enough light to see the brim of his hat. He didn't look up, but he was holding a paper bag with red ink dripping. From the bottom, I closed the curtain, locked the window, and left the nightlight on. Still, I told no one, not my handler, not Langley, not even myself, because I wanted one more day without doubting the only person who made the house feel like home. I thought I was protecting my family, but the listening started long before. I picked up the phone. The call was routine, just to check in with a cultural attach from the Spanish embassy. We were discussing paperwork, real boring paperwork, when I heard it. A delay. Half a second. My own voice echoed back, thinner, like it was traveling through water. I paused. So did he? You hear that? I asked. He said no. But I knew that pause. That microsecond of recalibration before a lie. I hung up, unplugged the phone, plugged it back in, called the dry cleaner as a test, no echo. Then I called a tech from the embassy's internal team. He showed up within the hour, opened the junction box, and poked around like he'd done it 100 times. Which he had. Nothing. There, he said. Maybe a loose coil. These old units hum sometimes. I asked if hums usually mimic your voice. He didn't answer, just smiled and offered to replace the handset. I declined. Later that night, I walked through the apartment like I was the stranger, tapped the walls, checked behind frames, moved the say. Radio. Nothing buzzed, nothing clicked, but everything felt. Occupied. She arrived the next morning like always. Same coat, same comb. She handed me a list of groceries she'd drafted in perfect English. At the bottom, in handwriting too neat to be casual. Milk, bananas, bleach. Bleach? I didn't ask. Instead, I visited my station chief that afternoon. Told her the place felt off, that someone might have been inside. She barely looked up from her folder. You wanted a normal life. Now you're paranoid about it. That's part of the deal. I didn't push, because part of me wanted to believe the echo was in my head, until I opened baby monitor. It had been off for weeks. We never used it. But that night, when I bumped it off the shelf, it clicked. Not mechanically, electronically. A flicker of red behind the speaker grill. Then dead again. I took it apart. Inside, nothing. Just an empty casing and a small copper thread where the battery used to go. But it had clicked. And I never mentioned it again. Because if I was being listened to, the last thing I wanted was to start sounding like a man who'd lost control. There's a moment in every long con where the setup stops feeling like performance and starts tasting like life. For me, it was a Wednesday. She was humming while folding laundry. The same song she always used, no lyrics, just a melody that could have come from any kitchen in Leipzig or Dresden. My daughter was asleep, arm curled under her cheek like a question mark, and I was at the table, sorting documents with the ease of someone who'd forgotten what panic felt like. She'd reorganized the cabinet the week before, labeled things, took out the chipped plates, replaced them without asking. I didn't stop her. She offered to pick up stamps at the post office. For your letters, she said. I hadn't mentioned letters. Still, the next day, there they were, stamps. In perfect order. Even the ones with the embassy watermark. She brought me a scarf once. Sighed I needed one for the colder mornings. It matched my coat better than anything I owned. I wore it. That winter, I started letting her draft my weekly schedule. Just the home stuff, doctor's appointments, grocery runs, school visits. She kept it tidy, even color-coded it. When my handler asked how I was keeping up with field logs and domestic cover, I said, I'm not. She is. They didn't laugh. The thing is, nothing was wrong. The flat was clean. My daughter was thriving. The laundry folded itself. And for the first time in years, I wasn't losing hair or sleep. I started writing reports faster, more accurate. My debriefings were sharper. I even gained a few pounds. One night, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man who wasn't watching his own back. It felt good. Too good. That's when I noticed the notebook Dot. She kept it by the fridge, said it was for recipes. But I caught her flipping through it backwards one morning, scanning instead of reading. When I walked in, she closed it too slowly. Never saw what was inside, but the next day, the notebook was gone, replaced by a new one. Same brand, same place Dot, just newer. I told myself it didn't matter, that she was just efficient, that I'd forgotten how to trust quiet people, and maybe I had. But in the middle of all that domestic calm, I started locking my briefcase again. I thought I was rebuilding routine. Turns out, she was writing the script. He didn't knock Dot, just stood there, coat open, snow on his shoulders like dandruff. No one dared brush off. I hadn't seen Leland since Langley back when they still smoked indoors and everyone pretended the Soviets were 10 feet tall. He stepped inside, scanned the apartment once and said, "Smells domestic." I didn't offer coffee. He wasn't there for coffee. Dot instead, we sat in the hallway away from windows, phones, anything that could hum or blink. He pulled out a folded paper, didn't hand it to me, just tapped it. "We've got a leak," he said. "Diplomatic sector." Nothing. Confirmed. But someone's listening too close. I nodded. Dot. He leaned in. "You've been clean for years, but maybe you're too clean now." I knew what that meant. Comfort breeds negligence. Negligence opens doors. Still, I played dumb. "You think they got to my handler?" "No," he said. "I think you've let someone in who shouldn't be there, even if they made it look easy." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "You trust your kids' drawings?" It wasn't a question. Before I could respond, he was gone. That night, I stared at a sketch of 3 red circles drawn on the fridge. They weren't anything unless you'd studied drop point markers. The Ninera arrived the next morning, like always, hair perfect, boots dry. She asked if I'd slept well. I said yes. She smiled like she believed me. I started testing her in small ways, swapping days on the schedule, pretending to forget something she'd reminded me of. Planting small errors in grocery lists. Dot. She never flinched. But the following week, my handler pulled me aside. "Langley flagged a pattern," she said. "Your microfilm transmission had a timing overlap with a Soviet intercept. Same day. Same window." She didn't accuse me. Didn't have to. I spent that evening sitting in my daughter's room, watching her sleep. Dot. And watching the Ninera through the cracked door as she folded towels she hadn't been asked to fold. Slow, careful, like someone waiting for the right time to disappear. That's when I started locking the bedroom from the inside. She said she prayed at night, but her murmurs never matched the words I knew. It was 3:14 a.m. I remember because I'd checked the clock twice. The baby had stirred. Softly, nothing unusual. But when I got up to check, the hallway was colder than it should have been, and the door to her room was slightly ajar. She was already there, standing still, back to me, in the faint glow of the nightlight. One hand resting on the crib rail, the other holding something small. Could have been a pacifier, or maybe not. She was murmuring. Not whispering, not singing, murmuring. The kind of low, rhythmic tone you use when the words don't matter. I froze, not out of fear, out of calculation. The kind you do when one wrong word could change the room forever. I stepped forward. She didn't turn, just changed tone mid-sentence, shifted into a soft lullaby, and looked over her shoulder with that same unbreakable smile. "She sleeps better when someone prays," she said. Then she stepped aside and let me near the crib. The baby was fine, breathing steady, thumb in her mouth. Still, I stood there longer than necessary, just watching. The Ninera moved to the kitchen. I heard the fridge open, the soft clink of glass. A drawer close. No rush. By the time I returned to the hallway, she was gone. Not out of the apartment, just no longer in sight. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, she offered oatmeal like always. Added a slice of apple in the shape of a heart. My daughter laughed. I didn't. Instead, I walked to my desk, unlocked the drawer, and placed my revolver inside. Then locked it again, not for safety, for proximity. That day, I asked for backup to review the building's entry logs. Nothing irregular, no unauthorized access, which meant whatever was happening was already inside. That night, I moved the crib closer to our room. When she noticed, she said nothing. Just adjusted the rug beneath it, aligned the edges perfectly, and left the room. And from that point on, I never turned my back when she sang. It was the red crayon that did it. Not the way she used it, kids love red, but the way she avoided it. My daughter, once obsessed with bright scribbles, had started organizing her colors like someone was grading her work. That morning, she handed me a drawing. 3 blue circles arranged in a triangle. Beneath them, 2 green lines, perfectly parallel. I asked her what it was. A garden, she said, but her eyes shifted toward the kitchen, where the Nanera was folding dish towels that didn't need folding. That afternoon, I took the drawing to the embassy and scanned it under UV light. Symbols, clear, embedded in the wax, a diagonal slash, a number grid, and what looked like half of a cipher key I hadn't seen since Budapest. 1962. I ran it through a codebase used for intercepted Stasi signals. It hit. Not a full message, just fragments. Enough to prove the medium was deliberate. I raced home, opened the desk drawer, checked the box where I kept the rest of my daughter's art. 6 more drawings, all with repeated elements. One with red dots in prime number sequence. One with a yellow spiral only visible under heat. One with the same 3 blue circles again and again. She'd been used. Or worse, she'd been trained. The Nanera arrived that evening carrying a new set of markers. She likes the ones with softer tips, she said. I said nothing. Took the markers. Watched her eyes when I turned the box upside down, red marker missing. She didn't blink. That night, I sat in the living room after everyone was asleep, opened each drawing under the UV lamp, mapped the codes, found dates, coordinates, times, but nothing complete. It was brilliant, spread over innocent pages, delivered in the only medium no one would ever suspect. The one thing even field officers ignore. A child's world. Stared at the wall for hours. Then I burned the drawings, not to destroy. Evidence. To stop myself from decoding the rest. The rendezvous was set for 4:30 Northeast Checkpoint, Tiergarten perimeter. Cold, dead hour. No traffic. No questions. I dressed in layers, tucked the microfilm into the false bottom of a thermos, and kissed my daughter on the forehead without waking her. She stirred anyway, murmured something in her sleep. I paused, listened. It sounded like a phrase I'd once taught her in English, but the accent was different. By 4:10, I was in the car, engine running, headlights off. At 4:22, a civilian patrol vehicle parked across the intersection. No markings, no lights, just still, like a chess piece blocking a file. I waited. At 4:28, they stepped out. 2 men. One lit a cigarette. The other opened the hood of the car, pretending to check the engine. No radio, no conversation, just choreography. Abort codes ran through my head. I called the secondary number. Line went dead. No confirmation, no backup. The operation was compromised. I turned around, drove 4 blocks south, parked behind a bakery, and crushed the thermos flat. poured the coffee into the drain, kept the lid. Back home by 5:07. She was in the kitchen, already dressed, making pancakes. I asked, couldn't sleep? She said, felt like it might be a long day. I nodded, sat down. Let her serve the plate. At 9 o'clock, the post-mission channel confirmed. Contact never showed. Later intercepted by East German. Police on suspicion of currency fraud. Cover. Interrogated. Beaten. Denied any American links. The leak had given them the exact window of the drop, minute precise. Only 3 people had access to the timing. My handler, me, and the schedule left on the fridge. That one had disappeared. When I asked her if she'd thrown out the grocery list, she said yes. But I hadn't mentioned which one. That afternoon, I visited the embassy archive. Asked for the original referral file from the French contact who'd recommended her. They couldn't find it. No record of transfer, they said. Probably informal. Right. Informal, like a handshake with a ghost. It was a Friday when I ordered the sweep. No prior incident. No directive. Just a feeling that had calcified into decision. I called in a discreet unit, 2 techs and 1 field analyst. Posed as embassy electricians. We started with the basics. Sockets, lamps, frames, nothing. Then I handed them a list. Places I wouldn't. Check if I were the one planting bugs. They started there. The first was inside a doll. Hollowed through the spine. Carefully stitched. Mic element the size of a thumbnail. Embedded in the stuffing. Still warm from the child's nap. The second was in a photo frame. One of the few with all 3 of us. Her hand on my daughter's shoulder. Me, slightly blurred, probably moving. The bug was inside the glass, beneath the matting. Battery self-contained. Wouldn't show up on standard scans? The third took longer. They almost missed it hiding in plain sight, the desk lamp. She dusted it every morning. Said the light was good for the eyes. Under the shade, a receiver coil wound with hair thin. Wire, piggybacked on the actual switch. Clever. Active only when turned off. She taught me to turn it off. That was the trigger. I sat at the kitchen table while the analyst photographed everything. I watched her toast bread like nothing had changed. The baby hummed in the corner. I looked at the floor. The same rug she'd straightened. The notebook she'd replaced. The routines I'd let become ritual. I told the team to remove nothing. Just document, then leave. She noticed the missing doll. Laundry, I said. She nodded. That night, I wrote a memo. Hand-delivered it to my handler. Included everything except her name. I used the coding name we'd started using among the techs. SILKE. My handler skimmed it, then said, "You're too close. We'll take it from here." I asked, "What does that mean?" She just said, "Don't be home Monday morning." She made lemon tea. The kind I hated. The kind she knew I hated. We sat across from each other. No baby between us. No distractions. She dressed neatly pressed skirt, cardigan buttoned to the top. The same way she'd looked the day she arrived. Like she knew the end had to mirror the beginning. I placed the photograph on the table. The one with the bug in the frame. She didn't even glance at it. Then the doll. Then the lamp switch. I didn't speak. She looked at the tea. Stirred once. Then twice more, as if stalling wasn't already the point. Finally, she said, "You're not as easy to fool as they thought." Not we. Not I. They got that word like a gunshot through the tablecloth. Why? I asked. She sipped the tea, wrinkled. Her nose slightly, then said, "Because you still believed you were the one protecting her." I didn't reply. She reached into her coat. For a moment, my hand moved toward my side, but she only pulled out a folded cloth. My daughter's mitten? She left it in the park yesterday. Then softer, "She's safe, because I made sure of it. You used her. I raised her. Better than you could have back then. She stood up. No panic. No rush. Just a woman. Leaving after finishing her shift. At the door, she said, "You're going to write a report. You'll leave out what matters." They always do. And then she was gone. Gone. No trace. No fingerprints. No records at the embassy. The French contact never existed. Or never worked for us. Langley ran facial scans. Nothing. No name. No past. Like she'd been stitched into time just for this. I filed the report anyway. Redacted most of it myself. Told them she was neutralized. They didn't ask for proof. I never saw her again. But 2 weeks later, my daughter drew a picture of a woman in a gray coat. Standing by a window. She titled it, Mama Silenciosa. It was a fairground in Maryland. Spring. Loud. Harmless. I was alone. The crowd moved in predictable waves. Cotton candy. Balloons. Rigged games. The kind of Americana you stage for no one in particular. I'd lived through enough propaganda to recognize it when I saw it. Then I heard the song. A child's voice. Off-key, singing in German. A lullaby. I stopped walking, turned toward the carousel. The tune was Old Schlaf, Main Princekin, but the rhythm was exact. Too exact. The way she used to hum it while folding blankets. The way my daughter had mimicked it once, not knowing. It didn't belong here. I looked around. Faces blurred in movement. Mothers, grandparents. One little girl spinning slowly on a plastic horse, eyes closed, lips moving in time. I didn't speak to her. Didn't need to. I walked to the edge of the crowd, sat on a bench, and stared at nothing for 20 minutes. The sun was warm, but something colder had settled in my chest. I lit a cigarette I didn't want. Crushed it out before it burned halfway. A breeze picked up. Smelled like cinnamon and damp wood. And for a moment, I thought I saw her. Just a silhouette by the exit. Gray coat. Still posture. Gone in 3 steps. I didn't chase, because some truths stop being useful once you finally accept them. If you made it this far, maybe you were meant to hear this. Subscribe if you want to know what else never made it to the files. And tell me in the comments, did you already know about any of this? Or did I just ruin your sleep?